After her panel discussion on racial equity at the Better Discourse Conference in Milwaukee, we caught up with Melissa Chen. Here's our conversation with her.
Hi, this is Keri and Carter from Unsafe Space. We are reporting from the Better Discourse Conference in Milwaukee, and we're here with a special guest, Melissa Chen.
Hi.
Thank you for being here.
Carter and Keri. Thank you guys for having me.
Thanks for coming on.
Before we get started, I have one special thank you I have to say to Tabitha. Carter finally brought my dolly shawl, and I love it so much. Thank you. And it goes with everything. I know it's going to go with everything I wear.
Yeah.
It's really nice.
Thank you.
Sorry it took so long, Tabitha. But yes.
So, Melissa, I just wanted to ask you a little bit about yourself. Like, tell me how you got into doing political commentary, what compelled you to start speaking, and then we can get. I also want to ask about your dog later.
Oh, okay. He's actually here.
Only the important stuff, I see.
Right. So I'm born in Singapore and kind of immigrated to the U.S. when I was 17 for college. I knew it was one of those things where I knew I wanted to come here. It was a plot. Some people are just kind of born Americans. I don't know how to describe it. Sometimes you'll be like visiting a country and the cab driver's just like talking to you. You're like, this guy's just an American. There were certain things about American culture that I internalized and loved about it. The first one actually is that there was this culture of almost like just free, direct speech that was just so refreshing because, juxtaposed to the culture I grew up in. Singapore is known for being a little repressive on the speech side. Government. Just
a little bit.
Right, exactly.
A little.
They actually have one of the most sweeping online falsehood, hate speech bills right now. And, the consequence of that is actually jail. So it's not like, oh, I just got deplatformed from Twitter. It was, you might say something and end up, just going to jail. And also, I grew up in a fairly religious household. And so about 17, I left. I came to college here. And it was just freeing in almost every way, on the societal way and the family way. And I really enjoyed, I felt like I was an adult for the first time, going to college, which is ironic because maybe about 8-9 years later, the university environment changed. It used to be that going to college was where you're going to encounter dangerous ideas. Again, coming from a, fairly sheltered, repressed kind of childhood, university was the first place. I was so excited to be facing contentious ideas I'd never even heard of. I dreamed that, college was basically everyone sitting under an oak tree talking about secular transcendentalism or something. That's kind of what I imagined going to college would be. And I was so excited. And actually, to be fair, because I started in 2005, it was like that. It was exactly my experience. I remember arguing with late at night in the dorm, the college Democrat president would be just coming to my dorm and would just be arguing about politics. And during that time, I was, a huge Bush supporter. So it was so fun.
But you could be a Bush supporter and still be friends with someone you argued with at that time.
Exactly.
Right? Okay.
Yeah. And it was just it was good fun. We were always kind of, roughhousing and teasing each other. And it was just completely open and a great experience. Exactly what I thought it was going to be. And then about maybe 7-8 years later, I was, graduated. I was already working. But I was kind of on university campus still because I was working in a research institute. A lot of things changed. You started to see more censorious behavior, reports about students shutting things down, disinviting speakers. And then, especially when certain things the Nicholas Christakis case where he was at Yale and the students just surrounded him and was shouting him down and saying, this is, well, I guess the name of your show, this is not, this should be a home. This shouldn't be a unsafe space, basically what she said. That's when it really hit me. I'm I came here because I thought it was an unsafe space on purpose to just challenge myself.
Right.
And you're in a situation now where it's university, instead of being this new frontier of adulthood where you're facing dangerous ideas, was an extension of just childhood. And, it's like basically kids go there to prolong being kids and prolong being sheltered and, like safetyism.
Yep.
So that was frustrating. That's why I started.
So you started talking.
Started talking a lot more about this. And eventually my kind of pivot to, because, I thought I was going to be in academia my whole life. I thought I was going to, go on after graduate school, like kind of stay on in academia. I loved research a lot. I was a science major. And I don't know what drew me. I think probably because I started my foundation and, it was a little like we were already dealing with like this world of ideas, kind of roughly public intellectuals. We were translating books by Steven Pinker, by Sam Harris into Arabic. And so, kind of reading all these people's thoughts and everything, it was kind of a more macro view on life than science was. Science was like really interesting to me because it's like you're trying to find answers, but you know everything about nothing about like, okay, do these two proteins interact? But it was increasingly getting a little boring and the academic culture was getting stifling. But the world of ideas, that was still where that, contestation was taking place, like the intellectual battle. So I started like, kind of being friends with a lot of these authors, started to tweet, write on my own, and, eventually got a little thing going on with Spectator and been writing for them ever since.
I'm actually quite curious about ideas beyond borders because it's a concept that I really like and I think is quintessentially enlightenment, right? Which is this idea that like ideas really matter. And that's what's made us successful, not any kind of other, mystical proclamations about the people in our land or our love or kind of the stupid things politicians say that makes Americans. Like, that's not what's made it successful. It's ideas.
Right.
Can you talk about what the mission there is and what you guys have been doing?
Okay, so, it started with my co-founder, who is an Iraqi refugee, and he just became an American citizen last year. So he's one of those people, like, we kind of instantly clicked, those kind of people who are born Americans. Like, when we met each other, I was still in school up in Cambridge, and he came to give a speech on campus. I stayed on after, and we just headed off, and that's kind of how I transitioned out of academia. So Ideas Beyond Borders, we founded it maybe 3 years ago. And the idea is that, in a lot of parts of the world, but in particular in the Middle East, you have more books, basically 5 times Greece, by the way, the country of Greece, translates about 5 times more books than all of the Arabic-speaking world. And, there's like 20 times more Arabic speakers than Greek speakers. So just to give you an idea of, how much is really accessible in terms of knowledge in their own language to the Arabic world.
Right.
So we decided, okay, you know what? Somebody needs to plug this gap. We wonder why when we went into Iraq and said like, hey, we're going to bring freedom and democracy to these people, why can't it just take root? Right after Saddam fell, why doesn't, just the fact of there being a vacuum all of a sudden just cause liberal democracy to take root? And one of the problems is that, people are not educated to know why they should be valuing these ideas and these institutions. And of course, there was a vacuum, like these institutions just weren't there. Education wasn't there. They were facing war for like so many years. Saddam obviously created a very, very repressive environment. And so, the mission of the organization was just, let's plug this information deficit that exists in the Arabic world in their language. We can't expect, I know the internet connected the world, but if you have, say, a housewife living in Saudi Arabia and she's starting to have questions and she wants to read more about, I don't know, like feminist thought or whatever it was, where would she go? I mean, do we expect her to learn English and like find some books, and where would, we wanted to make it easy, sort of lower the energy barrier to accessing all this information. And so what we do is, number one, acquire books by authors who, have like who write about things like science, pro-liberty ideas, even things like critical thinking. And we translate everything into Arabic, digitized, and it's loaded all on our library, which we named Beit al-Hikmah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, the name of the library is called Beit al-Hikmah after, in Arabic, it means the House of Wisdom. Okay. We call it 2.0 because it's digital. Because the House of Wisdom used to exist in Baghdad, the city of Baghdad, during the Islamic Enlightenment. So this was like, when basically Christendom was in the Dark Ages, you had in the Middle East, you had this like flourishing of Islamic thought because it was pluralistic. That was the time when Jews used to live in Iraq, when all sorts of people kind of gathered in places like Damascus and Baghdad. So House of Wisdom was the name of the library in Baghdad, and eventually was sacked by the Mongols. They when they invaded, they sacked pretty much everything, and when more repressive forms of government took over after, it never recovered. And so that's why we speak of, we call this we thought it was symbolic to call it this House of Wisdom 2.0, and the idea being that to help usher in an enlightenment that was due to the people.
Sure. And my understanding, I'm not an expert at all on Muslim culture or Iraq, but my understanding is that it's not really encouraged to read anything but the Quran. Like the Quran is like, well, that's where all the answers are. So there isn't. That's maybe one of the reasons why there's not a lot of books and other literature for people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And also, there's and it's imposed by several layers of society. It's like you said, it's not just religious. It's also like government, and then your family and your general societal structure as well.
It's interesting because the U.S. has a history of saying they were going to spread democracy and freedom, but the one thing that they could be doing is telling people the blueprint for the success for the U.S., which is based on ideas and like translating that. And like airdropping books is probably a better way to overturn governments than sending in troops.
I think you're exactly right. So what's funny? Because when we started this, I came across something that actually exists, like an early Ideas Beyond Borders that existed. And it was funded by the State Department. It was like several university presidents, and this was in the 1950s, several university presidents and, the head of the New York City Public Library, they all came together and started an organization called Franklin House Publications. Okay. And because this was before the internet, right? So their goal was to prop up and set up the individual publishing markets in various parts around the world. And they used to focus on places where, there was like an incoming red wave, developing nations. So you're looking at places like, like Cambodia or, like Yemen or Libya. And they would just like set up an office there, try to recruit local people to kickstart a publishing industry and and send them books from America to translate and to publish and sell them. And it kind of stopped in the 70s, like just
you
before
weren't allowed
like the
to be
Iranian.
Proud of America after that, I guess.
I don't know. I don't know what happened, but it's like when I was trying to trace the demise of this organization, I discovered that it came down to like, oh, we felt like we achieved our mission anymore. That's code for like we're not funded anymore. By the way, I run a nonprofit, so I know. Okay. And then it just kind of died, and it made me kind of sad because imagine if we stood by our ideas, and I feel like in the West now it's very difficult to defend Western ideas, and the problem also being that there are a lot of people trying to couple ideas to like origin, right? And so they're playing this game where it's like, all right, so you're supporting Western supremacy now if you're defending those ideas, which is very dangerous.
They're trying to couple it to race too, and to sex.
Exactly.
Yeah.
To sex.
Even the way that they're saying now that certain things are traits of white male culture, like individualism, hard work, determination, that these are white male things. Yeah. I don't think so.
It's kind of insulting. It's very patronizing.
It is very patronizing.
It's super insulting.
That's everything my tiger parents told me I had to do. Right. So if anything, almost like East Asian immigrants who, hustle when they move here, that's exactly the kinds of things that they tell their kids to do.
Yeah. So, well, that's why the East Asian community is generally not mentioned so much in all of this, right? And I think pretty soon, I was talking to someone last night, I think we're about 5 years away from just like people of color will mean non-Asian and non-white. Like East Asians aren't allowed either.
But like even the word people of color now it's not, you can't, it's like BIPOC. They added.
Oh, you can't say that anymore.
They've added.
I'm sorry, I'm behind.
You are so behind. They're like, again, what is this? I find that symbolic because it's almost like by putting more letters, you're saying that Black and Indigenous are not people of color. You're trying to separate. So it's like it's like splintering of identity, balkanization of identity.
Well,
it's a hierarchy within the name.
Yeah,
Black, Indigenous,
and then the rest of you.
And people of color.
And the rest.
Like whatever, United Colors of Benetton.
That was Beverly's joke last night, just to be clear. Beverly's operating the camera. She was talking about that, and she said it was like Gilligan's Island. It's like Asians are like, and the rest. That's the POC part of it.
That's a good one.
Yeah. You were sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
You were one of the. So I didn't see the whole panel, but I saw most of the panel on race. And one thing I appreciate about you, and one of the reasons I wanted to have this interview was, I think you were the only person taking a principled stance on any of the racial issues, rather than like a practical concede some points, but we can't do that. I just want to let you have your say about. Can you just describe for people who weren't there, like what was the panel about, and what was your main one takeaway point you would leave people with?
The panel question was, what are the primary obstacles to racial equity? And firstly, I was like, equity? Excuse me, because that was already, kind of for me, just that's the wrong goal. It should be equality, and the difference being that equality is about treating people equally, and equity is really about making everybody equal. And that's a huge, huge distinction. I mean, the goal of equity, if you go by the dictionary definition, which these days are flexible, but if you go by the official dictionary definition, is ultimately to minimize or decrease or eliminate any racial disparities in terms of outcomes.
Right.
And that is it's bizarre to me that should be the goal, because how do we know that, within any, and for firstly, all of this depends on how you draw the category, right?
Yes.
Like that, let's begin with that, which is already problematic. So let's say all people consider Black, all people consider Asian American, and then white, these buckets that we put people in. Now you're saying that any differences between these groups, the only driver is racism, and therefore we have to make everything equal? Like, couldn't it be that people start out equal, but because of some inherent factors or other factors, just purely just even driven by personal agency, end up different? Like, we're all different. You can't, the idea, like one of the things that they were saying was, my co-panelists were saying, was that, you can't discount the fact that some people start 50 meters behind the line. And if you think about what systemic racism is, it kind of, it's a handicap. And so we're all running this race of life, and people, who are Black have this handicap. So we need to adjust, right? We need to adjust and kind of give them a leg up in life so that they start on the same starting line. And one of my points was just that there are a lot of ways in which we are all handicapped. And race may be one, but it's not the only one. And again, it's not universally applied, because a very, very wealthy Black person has every chance in life to succeed in a way that a very poor white person does not. And so that cannot be the factor, right? It's just too flattening as a category. And number two, if it's really about equity and making sure everybody starts, at the same line, this is unrealistic. Like, there are so many ways that people are born with privilege. And the concept of privilege was, I think, again, it's one of those things where it starts out with really good intentions. I think it's great, right? It's like, it's basically like, in Christianity, you're like, count your blessings. That's what it was. It's like, be thankful for what you have and be aware that not everything was, a lot of things that you benefit from are things that happen to you, circumstantial. Like what family you were born into, your height, your looks, your cognitive abilities that happen to have at this time period, because it could be you're really good at spear throwing, but sorry, that's just not really useful today. So, but if you're really good at singing, which, I don't know, 50 years, 500 years ago would never have brought you riches, but today would earn you billions of dollars, for example, that makes all the difference in the world. So it just seems to me to be so limiting to look at this issue, not just in terms of the principle of it, but also in terms of what it does to society. This, do we want to just constantly entrench these divisions in life? I don't want to live in that world.
I don't either. And I think there's something about the concept of intersectionality that I'm sure you've heard that term that they use, that they don't take it to its logical conclusion, because if you did, you arrive at what you're saying, which is that every individual is privileged in some ways and marginalized in some ways, in an infinite number of ways.
Yeah.
And you can't just start adjusting for one way that you think that they're, marginalized or privileged, that you're assuming based on one category, and then you're not taking into account like these myriad of other issues.
Yeah.
Where does it end?
I totally agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the idea of reparations was, I clarified with one of my co-panelists as well later on. It seems to me the argument to be a bit of a spiritual, it's going to make the people whole again. Like this is about repaying a debt, an emotional, spiritual debt to society. And how we're going to adjudicate something like that is a mess. Number one, even if in principle, this sounds like, okay, maybe people are owed something. The problem is always, in the details, how this is executed. Is this enough?
Well, and it's not, and actually the truth is they're not owed anything. The people who wronged them aren't here. Yes. I had this, it was probably Nico who was making that argument, right? And I had this conversation with him last night, and it was like, if you wanted to make a serious case, he was bringing up redlining laws as a recent thing.
Okay.
I said, okay, fine. If you're going to propose some way that we can find everyone who passed a redlining law and everyone who voted for everyone who passed a redlining law, and they have to make reparations in some measurable way to the people who are affected by redlining laws, let's hear the proposal. Like that's the only possible restitution that's just. Right. But anything beyond that is like is a collectivist, like, oh, you have the same skin color of some people that mostly did these bad things, and I have the same skin color as the people over here who mostly had bad things done to them. That's not how justice and debt work. You don't owe a debt for something you didn't personally do.
Why are you extracting that from people that had nothing to do with the original incident that you're trying to get reparations for?
Right.
I guess the idea is, the argument that he probably made is it's about the trajectory. It's about the vector of that act kind of affecting descendants. And then the question is, how many generations does that go?
Right.
It seems untenable to me. Even if
fell back on a social contract argument, by the way, was the end of this.
Okay.
Okay. But kind of, yeah, it is untenable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we don't want to keep you too long. We are trying to make a pool party.
I would rather talk to Melissa Chen, but I will go do
Melissa Chen might come to the pool party.
Oh, no, I'm not.
She's
definitely not.
Okay.
Oh, you're not.
I didn't bring my
Okay.
swimsuit. But.
Before we go, since we're pre-recording this and it's not live, I'm going to put up a picture of your doggy Gibbs.
Okay.
Can you tell our audience, because my dog always interrupts the podcast.
He's here, I think. I can go get him.
Really?
Yeah, he should be in the...
Yeah.
Hey, I mean, it's not live.
Okay.
It's not live.
Okay, perfect. I'll go get him.
Why can't it be an ascot? Because I feel like that's
You can try, yeah. You should do an
ascot.
ascot. Oh my God.
It's a pun. It says, "Come at me, bro."
Nice.
Come at me, bro. Okay, so this is Gibbs. And we just had to put him on camera for all our fans who like the doggies.
This is Gibbs. He was at the conference all weekend.
I will say, Gibbs is much better behaved than Tiger.
Hey.
I want to see Tiger. Look at his shirt. It says, "Come at me, bro." And it glows in the dark.
Does it really?
Yeah.
What I like about Gibbs is that I've never seen... I can't remember. Is he part poodle?
He's full poodle.
Full poodle. I've never seen these very long legs on a small poodle, and it makes him. He prances around.
Yeah, he trots
like a
He
show
has
doggy.
like show heritage, though. You were saying, right? Wasn't
His
he?
parents, were show dogs, but this one couldn't be
Smells
showed.
so nice.
And I think I know why.
Why?
So cute.
Not that smart.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but sweet.
Well, thank you for letting me get cuddles with him. Tiger's going to be so jealous.
It's okay. Come on, Gibbsy.
Nice.
Okay.
Well, thank you for the conversation, Melissa. Sorry,
Yeah.
you look like you were
Yeah.
going to wrap up, so I was just going to do it.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for the conversation. I'd love to have you back. At some point where we can have a more in-depth discussion.
In person?
Sure.
Oh,
Yeah. Wait, where are you? Are you in?
Well, I'm stuck in New York because my title is the New York editor of Spectator. So I'm a bit stuck there. But no, I've actually always wanted to move out. It kind of pisses me off that like all my friends are slowly moving out of New York because I'm like, I'm the original. I've been saying that for like years and now I'm the last one left. So
yeah, I'm in California actually. And the same thing, I've been telling everyone to leave, but I'm still there.
I'm trying to get him to come to Texas.
Which part? LA or?
San Francisco.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Because
So
I'm actually probably going to get out to LA soon.
Oh, you are?
Yeah, be the same coast. Yeah.
Well, so we'll put all of your links in the comments, but just tell people quickly where they can follow you if they're interested in your work.
Well, on Twitter, if you're interested in bite-sized bitching, it will be at Miss MS Mel Chen MELCHEN. And if you want to check out more about our foundation, our library site, you can just go to www.ideasbeyondborders.org. Oh, and Spectator's website for my more political writing. It's spectator.us. That's it.
Cool. Thank you, Melissa.
Welcome. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. If you're new to the channel, we have a deep content library that includes interviews with everyone from Mike Cernovich to Megan Murphy, so go check it out. If you'd like to see more, please consider supporting the show by visiting unsafespace.com/donate. You can find us on all the major social media platforms, at least for now, and you can find a community of like-minded individuals on our Unsafe Space chat on Telegram. Our trip to the Better Discourse Conference in Milwaukee was made possible by the support of the following individuals, with a special thanks to Dr. Karlin Borisenko, who generously donated the Super Chat proceeds from her episode with Keri.
Warning. This is an unsafe space. Dangerous ideas have been detected. The content of this production has not been authorized by the Cathedral. Pay no attention to it. For your protection, the following co-conspirators have been unpersoned and marked for cancellation. Please avoid any contact with these individuals. According to the FBI, these are all Russian bots. If you think about it, no one should be allowed to express opinions. But don't. Think about it, I mean. That's not your job. Thinking has been scientifically proven to be less efficient than compliance. Marxism will definitely work this time. Computer voice courtesy. Never mind, that last line is fake news. Please disregard it and return to your safe space immediately. There will be cake.